Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Light Gate. We got a big night tonight ahead of us, and I'm going to give you where we're coming from right now. We are coming from the beautiful city of New Orleans in Louisiana with the United Public Radio Network at 107.7 FM and the United Paranormal Radio Network at 105.3 FM. We are on Roku. Roku, if you can't see us and you can't be in our chat, but we will endeavor to give you every possible way to see in your minds what's going on. We're on YouTube, we're on Facebook, we're on the Light Gate on Facebook as well, and many other destinations. Go, Preston.
Hi, Dolly. How are you doing tonight?
I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah, I had minor technical difficulties with my microphone, but I believe you can hear me now, right?
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
good. Well, I'm really excited to see all these wonderful, familiar people in chat. I just want to give a quick shout out to some of them. Brian Morgan, hello. Nice to see you here again. And here, of course, is Chris Teen. Always lovely to see you. There's Thirsty and Doxy. Always nice to see you here too. Louise, I knew you said you were going to be here, and here you are. Scuba Maru, always awesome to see you. And who else do we have here? There's Ruth Kleber, says greetings from Canada. And there's Susan. Hi, Susan. I can't wait to talk to you again real soon. And Real Badger, who I believe made it first to my video on YouTube last week. There's 1 Hour Wedding. And who else do we have? Finn. Mandy Lockheed said, so excited for tonight. Thank you, Preston and Dolly, for putting together such great shows. You're very welcome, Mandy.
Oh,
Thanks for
I
watching.
forgot to tell you something. Halfway through tonight, when we do our call letter, we're going to put up a little video for the network and for the awards thing that's coming up.
The
And we're
podcast.
going to do one at the end of the show as well. So we need 5 minutes of time there. Okay. And then go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Please vote for the podcast awards because there's some good shows out there that definitely need your vote.
Right.
Who else do we have in here? Janice Connet says, hello, everyone. This is going to be a great one. I sure hope so. I love, love, love our guest tonight. Here's W. Decker, who says, hi, everyone. Can't wait for another great conversation. So, yeah, all kinds of wonderful guests. John P. Adventures, Night Gazer. Oh, here's Dawn Curtis. Hello, Dawn. And who else do we have in here? Just a lot of you wonderful people. Christopher Harmon. I might miss a few of you guys. I'm scrolling down here. Terry D. And yeah, you guys showed up in droves. So we truly appreciate that. And I think I know why, because our guest is such a good one. I love her so much. I've known her for years and years and years. And tonight on the Light Gate, we are welcoming UFO researcher, crop circle researcher, experiencer and past life therapist, speaker, author, and herself a UFO experiencer, Barbara Lamb. Barbara Lamb is a longtime psychotherapist, having been licensed in 1976, and is a highly trained hypnotherapist and regression therapist since 1984. She had 5 years of training in regression therapy by the International Association for Regression Research and Therapies. She became a trainer for that organization as well as for the Professional Institute of Regression Therapy and the International Board of Regression Therapists. In 1991, she began regressing people to the details of their extraterrestrial encounters and has regressed well over 2,000 people in more than 4,000 regressions. Wow. That's amazing. To those and to other paranormal experiences. Barbara has been a dedicated researcher of the crop circle phenomena since 1990. Dolly, we are going to have to talk about that. I love the crop circles. She has personally visited and investigated hundreds of crop circles in England for 27 years, conducted crop circle tours, and she continues to follow this amazing phenomenon. She has given numerous lectures about crop circles at many groups, large forums, and conferences across the U.S. and other countries, and radio and film interviews on the subject. She's also an author. She's co-authored other books, let's see. She's co-authored the book Crop Circles Revealed with Judith Moore, which has substantial information and pictures of these amazing crop circle patterns laid down in our crops by some mysterious agent. I wonder what it is. She has also co-authored other books, including Alien Experiences with Nadine Lalick. I love that book. And Meet the Hybrids with Mendel Mendonca. She has spoken at every conference you can imagine, including, of course, the big one, Contact in the Desert. She's been on all the major UFO podcasts. She's been featured on TV, including on, of course, Ancient Aliens. No surprise there. And get this, she has received 3 Lifetime Achievement Awards. One from the International UFO Congress, from the Starworks USA Conference, and from the Conscious Life Expo in the field of ufology and for experiencer support. And on top of all of that, she's just also a really nice person. So I'm so excited to invite Barbara Lamb. Let's bring her into the stream. I'll just click her on right now, and there she is.
Here I am. Yeah. And I'm excited because, Preston, you are really one of my favorite people in the whole wide world.
Right back at you, Barbara.
You really are. I mean, I just think you are the most delightful, wonderful person. And the research that you have done and all that you have brought out in your many, many books, it's just incredible. I mean,
Oh.
I don't know if you think of yourself this way, but you certainly are here for a life of really important service.
Well, I appreciate that, because I think we got involved in this field very close to the same time.
I think so. Yeah. 1991 was my first year of involvement, of actually having about 5 different people that one year whom I was doing regressions with to their extraterrestrial encounters that they had had. And that began all of these years of really wonderful, fascinating work.
Right.
I feel very blessed that I've been fortunate enough to get to do this. I mean, and each person who comes, and it's well over the numbers that you mentioned. That's older information, but I've probably done about 6,000 regressions now to people's extraterrestrial encounters, plus continuing every now and then to do a past life regression. Or these days, for the last couple of years or so, more people than ever have been coming to me to find out about their real soul's purpose. And in other words, they have a sense, many people do, they have the sense that there's something kind of special that they're really here to do, not just to live their lives and have friendships and relationships and work and maybe get married, maybe have children, and always have the original family to deal with. But more and more people are thinking beyond that now and are really wondering, what is that special reason why I came into this lifetime? So that means that more and more people are aware that they are continuing souls, which I totally believe, and that now and then they come into a lifetime. And most of those lifetimes that we know about, or at least that I know about, are lifetimes on Earth. And it once in a while comes up in somebody's regression that they were an extraterrestrial being in a previous lifetime, or maybe even a whole series of previous lifetimes.
Yeah,
So
I think I might be included in that, actually. I have some memories, just saying.
well, and I think that would certainly fit my knowing of you, Preston, and because you're so interested in this whole subject, so interested not only in the mechanical objects, the UFOs, but in people's experiences with them. So
Yeah.
it could be that many of us who are interested in this field have been a part of another species. In fact, um, I was wondering that about myself. And during the writing of the book, Meet the Hybrids, with, by the way, my wonderful co author's name is Miguel Mendonça.
Ah.
He's living in England, but point of thing, he came from the Azores, and it's a soft sea in
Thank you.
Mendoza. Anyway, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful man. And so he too, um, was wondering about himself. So we did a regression to a very major experience that he had had, about 20 years earlier, and, continued to wonder about. It was one of those camping nights, out in the wilderness with a couple of friends and sleeping in a tent. And he got up to have a little bathroom break in the middle of the night and came back, and bending over his sleeping bag in the tent was a great big lighted angel.
Nice.
And he wondered about that ever since, for 20 or more years. And then we did a regression to that experience. And that being said, I am here so that you know that we are real, meaning not just angels are real, but that beings from other areas of existence, other dimensions, that they do exist. So, what better way for you to know about that than to have your very own personal encounter with one?
Wow.
And
Absolutely.
I frankly think that that has a lot to do with many of the extraterrestrial encounters that happen. That in many cases, the beings want the person to know that they exist, and they want the person to wake up, or wherever they are when the experience starts, to be at least briefly aware of them. And then they may make the person not conscious for the things like floating the person up in the air and across the room and out through the wall and out into space and up into a craft, because we people tend to get pretty freaky about things like that.
Yeah.
And it's just a lot easier all the way around if they have us not be consciously aware of those details.
I think that's why they sometimes return you to the wrong bed or something, just to leave a little clue. Maybe put
Right.
your feet on the pillow and your
That's
head
right.
go to the bed or something.
You're lying right across the bed. Oh, I've had that happen to so many people who've come to me, and sometimes the person has been returned outside of their house, and it might still be in the middle of the night or very, very early morning, just dawn time. And then they try to get in the house. And of course, the house is the doors are locked, and maybe even the security system is still on. And of course, that's really baffling to the person. So how on earth could I have gotten outdoors without setting off the alarm? And why wouldn't I remember that?
It's
So
more proof that this is an actual physical experience. People are not imagining this.
that,
But we
that's
have so much to talk about, Barbara. But I know Dolly's chomping at the bit. She really, really wanted you on the show after meeting you at MegaCon or whatever it was.
Yeah, MegaCon in 2021. I,
oh
I followed you around like a puppy dog, if you remember.
yeah.
We had that experience with the sauna people. That was lots of fun. And
But what I want to start with, Barbara, is how it all began for you. As a little kid, did you have any encounters? Were you skeptical? I mean, how did this all unfold for you?
You know what? I had just such a normal childhood. I don't, and I'm grateful for that. Um, I didn't have any kind of experience of this sort really until I was well into my adult years. I didn't, I, as far as I know, and I've certainly thought a lot about this,
Me too.
as far, as far as I know, I didn't have any personal encounter experiences with extraterrestrials until 1994. So anyway, I grew up in a just a regular, safe neighborhood, nice parents, uh, a nice older brother who was sometimes nice and sometimes not so nice. But anyway,
As older brothers are.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And he was a good guy. Grew up to be a good man. He really did. And and anyway, we always were on different paths in life, even though at that point I didn't have that term for it. You know, my path in life. But I just was interested in eventually growing up and helping people, but I didn't know how I would help them. And, you know, as I got older, had more schooling and everything, I was aware that there are certain quote unquote helping professions. You know, there's being a medical doctor or a nurse or a social worker or a teacher or psychotherapist. And I was thinking of, you know, psychiatry and drugs and medication and all that. You know, that didn't appeal to me at all. But still, I always carried within me that wish to be helpful. Well, fortunately, after I moved to California from Connecticut, uh,
Wow.
and, and by the way, I always felt that in moving to California, that somehow my life was really going to open up in a different direction. I just thought, well, it's going to be incredible growth coming along. I have no idea in what area, but I just knew it. I had that sense of adventure. And the reason that why I moved there is because my husband got a job here
Wow.
in California. And and when he went for an interview and he called me, I was home with our three little kids, and he told me about the interviews he'd had at St. Louis and in uh, Toronto, Canada, and then Southern California. And when he told about the kids playing outside all year in their t-shirts and how you could go skiing, which was our great passion, within a half an hour, you could be up on Mount Baldy skiing. And then the same day, if you wanted to, you could drive another hour or so to the ocean.
Yep.
And but when he said about the kids playing outdoors in their t-shirts all year, I said, take it, take it, let's go. So we did. So here we are. And anyway, life opened up very much, and I discovered the joys of developing counseling skills and also doing movement as a therapy. So I did those two tracks through the late 1960s and through the 1970s. And by the mid 70s, I realized, you know what? People are really kind of counting on me for some good work here in these two modalities. I better get official here. I better get licensed. So I went to graduate school, became you know, a master's degree person, and then licensed as a therapist. And then it was in 1984 that I discovered, to my incredible amazement and joy, that there was such a thing as doing regression work to past lives. And by that time, I was already very, very believing in past lives because of some spontaneous past life recall experiences. I had several of them, really vivid, dramatic memories.
Well,
Anyway, I
don't
got
skip over that. I want to hear a little bit about that.
we oh okay.
Yeah,
Well, the
just
first one was
briefly.
sure. First one was in 1981. I went on a trip with a group to Egypt, and on the way from the airport into Cairo, looking out at the flat desert, I was just amazed because it was so familiar to me. And I thought, why? I've never been in any territory like this. Why is this so completely familiar? So that was the first thing. And then we were there for about a month. And we went to a temple um, south in the southern part of the Nile and at the Aswan area. And at that temple, I had, oh, a really vivid memory of a whole life of having been there. I mean, it was really detailed, technicolor memories,
Wow.
and with full of feeling too. And that went on for probably 20, 20 minutes or more. And I thought, wow, what is this? I don't think this is just my imagination. And the other outstanding one there was that when we got into the Great Pyramid at Giza and into the king's chamber, our group was standing around the sarcophagus in the king's chamber and doing a ceremony with somebody lying in the sarcophagus. And as we were doing the Om chant for probably a good half an hour or so, I mean, you can really get into a wonderful altered state of consciousness doing that. And we did. And of course, the energy of the king's chamber anyway, all that granite sort of reflecting our frequencies. This is a magnificent experience. And I found myself after a while just doing these motions with my arms. And I began to remember being a priestess with a long, long robe and those big sleeves, and that I was helping the person in the sarcophagus who was alive.
Wow.
It was not a burial situation, an initiation for that person lying in the sarcophagus. I was helping that person's soul to leave the body and go up to the North Star, which was the final initiation for that person.
Oh, I know Dolly's losing her mind right now because she's had a past life memory as a Egyptian priestess or priest. Is that right,
Priest,
Dolly?
yes, in that temple, that very temple you were talking about. And
It
there are
was a temple.
niches along one of the hallways in the temple. And I was in a niche and I had a torch and I was wearing a ceremonial headdress on. You know, it was an animal. I think it was the one for Ra. And there was one across from me. I could see him, and there were others up and down, and they were in a procession to go do a ceremony, a lot like what you speak of.
Ah,
And as they went by, we all fell in behind them and went all the way down into this huge chamber. And there was a sarcophagi, and there were priestesses there. And I remember seeing the ceremony and watching it. I was already an initiated priest, and I had memories of my ceremony as well. And I looked at my hands. You know, it's like when I get in a situation like that, and I'm recalling something, I try to um, move my sight to parts of me or parts of my surroundings because I'm trying to see it and
yeah.
connect to it. And I looked at my hands, and I had very masculine hands, and I was holding that torch. And I remember thinking, "Oh, my arm is killing me," you know? And
Right.
it's never forgotten. I mean, and I have flashes of other things going on there as well. But yeah,
Seems to be a lot of people who
Well,
recall Egyptian past lives. I worked with a lady, and she was so into Egypt. I could just see it in her. And I have a friend, Neil, who is obsessed with pyramids. I'm starting to pick up on, past lives with other people sometimes.
yes, yes.
And I'm
Well,
sure you've regressed people who kind of
right.
remembered that as well.
Yeah,
oh, right. And Dolly, probably your final initiation was in the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid.
probably was. Yeah, I remember the pyramid quite
Yeah.
frankly. I remember a lot about it. I also remember the Sphinx. There's stuff under there as well.
Oh,
And
yeah.
there's some real interesting places that they don't tell people about that are all,
That's right.
underground. I also remember the pyramids being surrounded by water. I have very vivid memories of water
Ah, yes,
everywhere. Yeah,
apparently it had flooded at
right.
some point, even
Yeah,
though right now it's up on a plateau,
right.
uh,
Exactly.
reasonably high from the river, but
Yep.
from the Nile, but it wasn't always that way, that's for sure.
Yep.
So anyway, that was another vivid experience of being this priestess, and it was actually the second incarnation that I revisited for a bit of time on that particular trip, and then after my whole group left and visiting hours were just going to begin. We had been there early morning with special permission, of course, and I had one friend wait with me just to kind of watch out, make sure everything was okay, because I wanted to get into the sarcophagus, and, and I,
Uh,
and I did.
yeah.
And it's of course, it's granite, so it's a very, very hard floor to lie on. But nevertheless, I was in there for just I think a few moments, and then I could feel myself leaving my body out through the back of my body and the granite and up and out, and was out there probably for 20 or 30 minutes or so. And then my friend um, was just getting panicked because she didn't understand about astral travel and out of body experiences. So she saw that I was lying there looking like I was asleep, and my body was breathing, but I wasn't responding at all. So finally she was yelling and actually taking her camera strap and leaning over into the sarcophagus, hitting my body and yelling. And that started to bring me back,
Wow.
into my body. And as I floated down, I heard my friend's voice on one side saying, "You gotta come back. I don't understand this. What am I going to tell your parents?" Which was really cute. And she knew my parents because we had been childhood friends.
Wow.
So, and then I saw these flashes of light on the other side and heard somebody speaking German as I was floating down, and then sort of sank back into my body and opened my eyes. And I saw my friend who was still yelling and hitting me. And the other side were two people from Germany who were taking flash pictures of me in the sarcophagus. And so that's what all that was about.
Oh,
But
wow.
anyway, that was a great experience. So I had a couple more experiences in Egypt that time. And then I went to Peru a couple months later and had two very, very vivid, sudden, um, detailed memories. And it was one of those that really, really caught my attention and thought, you know, I need to do something about this. And that was that I was climbing that extra peak that you often see in the photos of Machu Picchu,
Yeah.
the big sort of a conical shaped mountain in the distance. That's called Huayna Picchu. And I was climbing that with a group of people. And at one certain point at the trail, which is right near the edge of that mountain, I just froze in terror and could not move. And other people came up and went past me and on up the trail to the top. And I really wanted to go to the top,
No.
but I just couldn't. I was terrified. And I kept saying to myself, what's the matter here? I mean, you've climbed plenty of mountains. You've been at the edge of cliffs. You've been at the edge of that huge volcano in Hawaii, and you're careful, but you're not frightened. What's going on? And finally, my companion had to come down from where he was higher up in the mountain, take my hand, and pull me out of that spot. And then I was okay. Well, when I got home from that experience, I just sat in meditation one day thought, what the heck was going on there? And what I remembered was like a spontaneous regression. So I didn't even know about regression yet at that point. I did it. I did one, and and realized that I had been a young, dark-skinned man with very straight, dark hair, and with kind of a loincloth and leather sandals on, and that I was running up that peak. And at that point, where in this life I froze in terror, an enemy young man had been chasing me up that trail. And right at that point, which was the edge of the cliff, and there I was. And he lurched forward with a knife to stab me. And to avoid that, I lurched backwards and fell off the cliff and fell a whole mile down to the rocks on the Urubamba River down below. So that somehow, the trauma of that past life, which was probably at least hundreds of years ago, that apparently still got carried over by my soul. And
Yeah, that
showed
seems
up
to be
when
the
I got to
pattern.
a particular place. Yeah, the other one that happened at Machu Picchu was not traumatic. It was very interesting. I was a little girl, short, stocky little girl with straight black hair and darker skin, and just walking across the big lawn there and knowing where my home was. And I actually, when I kind of came out of that memory, I went and checked it, and what I had remembered as a little girl turned out to be there in reality. So that was good too. I mean, in other words, there's some real realism about these things. Well, then on my second trip to Egypt, which was 1983, I had more spontaneous past life recalls, as I called them, and one of them was so tragic that I suddenly felt terrible from having felt perfectly fine. And then we went into this underground tomb for the bull gods that were in prominent belief at a particular time in Egypt, especially in the Memphis area. And anyway, and then we rounded a corner in that underground tomb, and suddenly, boom, I had this enormous flash of memory of seeing this beautiful brown-eyed, dark-skinned man crushed under the lid of a bull god sarcophagus, big, heavy granite lid, probably that weighed at least a ton, I would guess, and that we were slaves and working on to get that uh, sarcophagus. It was really for the dead bull.
Wow.
And the lid had slid and crushed this man who was my dearest friend and confidant in that life. We were both men, we were both slaves. And as I was trying to lift the lid off of him, the slave driver was whipping me with a whip, and and there was no way I could lift it myself. And the slave driver wouldn't even let me get help from the other men. We couldn't save my friend. I had to just watch him die in great pain. So that one was full of so much emotion, so much grief. And after being in that tomb, within an hour, we were on a train going down to Luxor. And I told my traveling companion, look, just go into the dining car and have some drinks, have dinner. I just need to be by myself in our compartment. So I took a couple of hours to just go through that whole life and all of those feelings, and I sobbed and grieved heavily. So as a result of that spontaneous recall, I thought, I'm already a therapist by several years now. There must be some way that these past life experiences could be used helpfully, therapeutically. And I didn't know how to do that or that it was even possible to do that for about another year and a half. And then I discovered that there is such a thing as doing hypnotic regressions. And I went to a workshop and had some done on myself, which was about 6 different lifetimes in that one week. And so that was just absolutely fascinating. And I just felt, this is such a natural for me. I really need to get into this. And it wasn't too long after that I serendipitously, synchronistically, went to a meditation evening, one particular evening, and met the woman named Hazel Denning, who had founded the Association for Past Life Research and Therapies, which eventually became the name that you mentioned, Preston, International Association for Regression Research and Therapies, and got 5 years of training because of knowing her. And that's what started my regression work. But it wasn't until 1991 that the first client came to me for that particular reason, because she was having enormous trauma and distress from having these really unusual, unhuman visitors very often in the night. And she had a real sense that she was taken away for a while with each one of those experiences. So 6 sessions with her, 6 regressions, and she got completely over her fear about being visited again and was ready to move out into the wilderness with her boyfriend, move away from her parents. And so then I thought, wow, this is really helpful work. I'm open to anybody else coming if they ever would. I didn't necessarily think they would, but a few months later, another woman came for the same reason, and then another and another. So there were 5 people that first year.
Well, so what were you thinking? I mean, because this is kind of your introduction to the whole idea of extraterrestrials.
Yeah.
We were thinking, oh my God, people are being taken. Is this, I mean, how did you feel about that?
Well, I had a mixture of feeling. Mostly, I think, I was fascinated. And I had many years earlier seen the movie E.T., and I had seen Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and which many of you have seen probably. If you haven't, they're really, really worth seeing, in my opinion. Anyway, I'd seen those. So I had from, oh gosh, 10 or 11 years earlier, I'd had a feeling of, oh, wouldn't it be nice if there really were other beings, other life forms out there in the universe? It would be shocking to us, but something special about that idea. I had also, during those intervening years, early 1980s, I had read the book called The Little Prince about this little, wonderful little guy.
Love that book.
Who had hair that looked very much like mine. I really identified with him. Blonde and curly. And that he had come to Earth from his own little planet and landed in the desert. I think it was Morocco, the Sahara, which I eventually went to myself. And there he met the pilot of a small crashed airplane. And they became really dear friends. And then the little prince realized after a while it was time for him to go home, which meant to go back up into space and to his planet. And he said, whenever you look up at the night sky and you see one little star sparkling, especially, that's me thinking of you. Oh. And with that, when I read that, I was so moved, even though this was a fictional story as far as we know. Anyway, I started crying, and I cried for about 8 hours straight. And my kids kept saying, "Mom, what's the matter?" My husband said, what's going on with you?" And but I was just so deeply touched that another being, another life form from way out there in space could come here and develop a wonderful relationship with a human. So that really,
There's
oh,
something more going on there.
yeah. I mean, to have that reaction for 8 hours. And then a couple of years after that experience, I went to visit my son up at the University of California at Santa Cruz. And it just happened that one of those evenings I was up there, the Little Prince movie was on the
Wow.
theater in the town
Yeah.
cinema. And he said he had been there when I had done all that crying a year and a half or so earlier. He said, "Mom, would you like to see that? I know that story means a lot to you." And I thought, "Oh yeah, well, it's been a year and a half or whatever." And so I'm probably okay. I can probably go without crying. And I did very well through the whole movie. And he kept looking at me, you know, "Are you okay, Mom?" So yeah, I'm doing well. But then at the very end, that special scene where the little prince is going to leave, in other words, die, and was talking to the man who he'd become such dear friends with, and the same old phrase, anytime you look up at the night sky and see a little star, especially twinkling, it's just me thinking of you. And then the tears started flooding again. I just thought that's the sweetest thing. And
Do you
I
identify with that somehow, though? I mean, do you have a feeling maybe that you have somebody looking out for you like that?
That's what I was thinking.
What a
I
nice
was.
question. What a very nice question. I never thought specifically about that, but yeah, maybe I
All
can.
that kind of emotion out of you, I would assume
Yeah,
so. That there's somebody up there watching you intently who talks to
right.
you even,
So
you
that
know?
opened me to the idea as
Yeah.
I began to learn about ETs and abductions and UFOs. I carried with me that idea. You know what? I bet there are some beings who really are lovely and very positive and even very loving. And so when I began to hear that from clients, I did not suggest that
Mhm.
to anyone, but when that would come out in some people's regressions, oh, I just knew it was true. And then of course, you see there are many, many, many beings out there of various kinds. They certainly are different sizes, shapes, looks, and everything. And they have different agendas. So, in the many regressions I've done, um, some of them are not so likable, not so friendly, and they do things with people, a lot of physical examinations going on. But as it turns out, when I'm regressing somebody to a physical procedure of some sort going on, so often there is the component that the beings who are doing those procedures are actually doing something to help the person,
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yep.
although it
That's
doesn't
what I found.
seem like it. And Preston, you've written one book, I think two now, about ET healings. And I know I mentioned some cases that I had. I think you put some of
Yeah.
those in one of your
Back
books.
healing, a heart healing, little kids doing Reiki. But
Yeah, oh, yes.
they
Yeah, learned by the ET, from the
right.
ET. So, anyway, I have found and usually do in a regression if somebody finds themselves on a medical table on a craft and there are these unusual beings around them. And of course, that could be very disconcerting and out frightening to
Right.
people. And so, as the experience is going on, very often I will say to the person, if you want to, you can find out why they're doing whatever they're doing.
Right.
And all you have to do is ask them.
Right.
You can ask them out loud or you can ask them with your mind, and they will most likely answer, because that's what happens in most of
Right.
the regressions I've done. And so they ask the question, and then they get an answer, and the answer is always very to the point. It's very specific, such as, for example, we are healing your liver, or we suspect there's a problem with your pancreas and we're checking that thoroughly. Or even when they do the dreaded rectal probe that many experiencers complain about. In a couple of my sessions, when the person has asked, why are you doing that to me? I don't like that. But the beings say, we're sorry about that, but this examination is the most thorough examination of all of your systems that we can do. So rather than doing a whole bunch of different tests, we're doing this one test because it tells us everything we need to know. And then the beings will sometimes tell the person during or after the exam, tell the person that we detect that you have a problem with a particular organ, and we suggest that when you are back on Earth, you go to your doctor and ask for a test specifically for that organ, because we detect some malfunctioning there. And in other cases, instead of just telling the person, they will go ahead and heal whatever the physical problem is.
I'm so glad you're saying that right now. There's a huge point that is so important to make to the masses on this planet.
Yeah.
Some people ask, well, why haven't I been healed by them? And the answer generally is your karma is subjecting them not to be able to touch that. But they're telling you to go to your doctor because you do need to work on this. This is your journey, your path, that you have to find this out. And we're giving you a clue, and you need to go that way.
And that's a very, very useful clue, because
absolutely.
maybe the person hasn't been aware that they have a problem with that particular organ.
Right. Exactly.
Or maybe they've been feeling kind of crummy, but they haven't known what it was, and maybe their doctor didn't even know what it was.
Right. Exactly.
So I have case after case of that. A guy had a major heart issues. He didn't know it, had an ET appear, and he had an impulse to go to the doctor and ended up having an immediate triple bypass. The doctor was amazed he was alive.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's very dramatic, I must say. And they also sometimes will come and heal a person right here at home.
Oh, yeah.
Person's home. I mean, that frequently happens. It's not always just on the spaceship. And in fact, that very first client I had back in 1991, in one of the regressions, well, she was healed twice by different beings. And the first one, she had a very painful ear infection at one point. And during that infection time, she was lying in bed at night on her back and noticed that in the middle of the night that there were 3 tall white beings. And when I say white, I mean really white, chalk white or paper white. And the 3 beings rolled her over onto her side with the infected ear on the upside. And she was aware, she was kind of in and out of consciousness, but she was aware that there were these long, they felt like very long, thin fingers in her ear doing something. And then she just kind of, went out of consciousness. And then in the morning, when she woke up, the ear pain was completely gone. The infection had completely healed up. So, I mean, what a wonderful thing. Oh, yeah. Alien experiences. Thank you for putting that up there.
I have a really big question at this point. It's burning in me, okay? Have you had since you began doing this, working with people and regressing them and talking about ETs, have you ever had an experience from that moment forward? I mean, have you had in your life any at all after?
Yes, I had. Well, I began doing this work
Yeah.
began doing this work in 1991, and then in 1994, I was having conversations with an extraterrestrial being remotely through the channeling of one of my clients. And this wonderful being, who said he's on the binary star system of Antares, he said, it's on your star maps. He said, we don't have a name for it, but we know that you humans name everything. But anyway, I used to have wonderful conversations with him through the wonderful ability of this particular client who would bring him through often in our sessions for, oh gosh, 10 or 11 years. And so in 1994, in January, he said, Barbara, if you would like to, you can be taken for the making of a crop circle. And he knew that I was going every summer, very dedicated to doing that work in England. And I said, oh, wow, thank you. Wow, gulp. I'm not sure. Anyway, it took me 6 months and many more regressions too to ET experiences. But anyway, about 6 months later, when it was time for me to actually leave to fly to England for crop circles, I had another conversation with this wonderful being and said, I've decided I would like to have that experience. How can I bring that about? And he said, well, you have to ask them, and you have to keep on asking them, and not just once, but give it some time. I mean, really stay with it. And you have to convince them that since you have not been having experiences of this sort, but now you would like it, and be specific. You'd like to be taken for the making of a crop circle.
Mhm.
So I did that on my car drive to Los Angeles airport for about 45 minutes. I was just out loud by myself in my car, just talking to the beings, not knowing what they looked like or who they were, but just assuming that there was the intelligence, the creativity, the beings who were doing these beautiful crop circles. And I noticed that as I was talking about it, I was getting more and more excited. And my energy was really, really strong about it. I was complimenting them on all the incredible crop circles they'd already made and what a gift it was to us and a gift to the earth itself, and on and on and on. And then I got to the airport, flew to England, and did about 3.5 weeks of other things like visiting other crop circles, being at a conference, speaking at a conference, doing a little sightseeing with my husband over there. And then uh, back with the conference group again the night before our last day of going out to find crop circles, I suddenly thought, I don't think anything like that has happened. And this is my last night. If it's ever going to happen, it needs to happen now. So I was really thinking about that pretty intensely, got into bed, turned off the bedside lamp, and then almost immediately I could see three short figures with big heads and little necks, little bodies, coming toward me from the area of the window. Uh, there was night light coming through the window behind them. So they were looking like silhouettes to me. I never really did get a good look at their faces. But anyway, they came toward me, and then I was out of conscious awareness until the alarm clock woke me up the next morning, a few hours later. And then we all had breakfast, and we got into a big double-decker bus and drove about 45 minutes. And I was on the top deck looking out at all the fields for any possible sign of a new crop circle. And we went past a field we had been past the day before, and I recognized that field because it had two of those big megalithic stones standing up in it. So it was a familiar field. And the day before, there had been no depression in the wheat crop there. But this particular day, there was a whole area out in the middle of the field that seemed to be depressed. And I thought, oh my God, that could be a new crop circle. I bet it is. So when the bus stopped, I ran down the stairs and jumped out of the bus and joined my friend who was following in a rented car and said, I think there's a new crop circle back there. And she
Wow.
said, get in, we'll leave the group and we'll go. And two other ladies happened to hear this and they said, can we come too? So four of us went back about half a mile to where that field was and went into the field along the tractor track. And yes, indeed, it was a beautiful, beautiful crop circle. And make a long story short, I found out in regression after getting home again, after being home for about 10 days or so, that was the crop circle that I had been taken for the making of the previous night. And everything about it just fit together.
Wow. Do you have a picture of it? I asked.
Yes, I do.
Does Preston have it?
I don't
you-
think so.
Do you have the crop circles revealed book right there?
I do, yeah.
Put that up.
Okay, so in the colored pictures in the front of the book are the colored pictures, and
Give me a
not
second. I have the
two-
cover.
That's what we want.
okay, but this crop circle that I made is in the pictures. Yes, good, thank you. So that picture is not actually.
It's the one with it's a square and it has like 4 cross of different pictures of crop circles. I was looking at it yesterday. That's why I'm asking.
I can go get it if you just wait a moment.
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where did I see that
Yeah.
crop circle?
What I love about these crop circles is they're so obviously meaningful
Right.
and they're so beautiful. And for those who don't believe in crop circles, it's not Doug and Dave. Dr. Levengood did scientific research on these crop circles and proved beyond any reasonable doubt
Right.
that these are not human-made because the nodes in the wheat stalks have been exposed to some type of apparent radiation, which has caused the cell structure to be altered significantly.
Right. Okay, Barbara. Put Barbara up on the big screen.
All right, hold on a second. Let me just remove that.
Okay, so it's hard for me to see it with a. Okay, it's this, the brown one.
Oh, wait, okay, I see what you're.
Wait a minute. Oh, I'm sorry. No, it's this one with all the circles. Is that showing? I can't see the screen with the book in front of me. So it's a series of circles going around in a circle, and then it's surrounded by a ring. Now, this happens to be the last in a series of about 22 or 23 crop circles that happened that year, 1994, which were following the actual happening in space of the Shoemaker-Levy comet
Right. That's
hurtling across the sky with 21 pieces in it,
right.
and they all collided with Jupiter
Right.
in the same spot.
Right.
And so it took, about 23 days or so to do that.
Right.
Well,
They were
And
two
this-
massive objects first, and then they broke apart. The closer they got to Jupiter, they started breaking apart, and they almost hit like they were waiting their turn. Boom, 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 boom,
Yeah,
and you could
right.
hitting on the surface, and it was incredible. I mean, incredible to see this happening. It was totally cool.
Yeah, Dolly saw it from the UFO itself. They took her up to watch the collision.
Yeah, I got to go up.
Really? Oh
Yeah,
my
and I
gosh.
interviewed another contactee who was told by the ETs about Shoemaker-Levy coming and would collide before the scientists even knew. So it's so interesting, Barbara, to hear another connection to the whole Shoemaker-Levy incident
Yeah.
for Jupiter.
Oh, that's thrilling. I want to hear about that. And anyway, every time that a piece came and collided with Jupiter of the 21 pieces, every time one hit out there in space, a new crop circle of that whole long comet appeared on Earth in Wiltshire County and Hampshire County.
It's like they were taking stills of it.
Each time it had
exclamation point, exclamation point. That was the intention all the way across the board. Yep.
Right. And each time the crop circle appeared, it had one fewer circle in it.
Right.
In its long tail.
Yep.
Because, as one would hit, then there'd be one left in the rest of the comet. So this particular crop circle, which I happened to find and be taken for the making of, was the final one in that whole series. That series had started in May,
right,
when there was a in a very young, green, beautiful crop, and it looked kind of like a big insect head with sort of curved horns, shall we say, flying along the hillside. And then there was another one in July, just before the comet actually hit Jupiter. And then after the very night, I mean, this is so amazing to me, the very night that impact happened on Jupiter, and there was sort of a round pattern formed by the impact, and that pattern showed up that same night as a crop circle in England. And then, as I said, every time another piece hit Jupiter, they'd show another pattern of what was left of the comet, and how there was one fewer piece left.
Now, wait, before you say anything else, we do have to take a very quick station break. And the chat is going crazy, and there's all kinds of questions for you as well, which I would love to get to at some point.
Okay.
I love you in there. But yeah, let me just take a quick station break and let everyone know that you are watching The Light Gate. I'm Preston Dennett. My lovely co-host is Dolly Safran. Our wonderful guest is Barbara Lamb, author, experiencer, hypnotherapist, and more. And we are live streaming on United Public Radio Network at 107.7 FM in the beautiful city of New Orleans, and also UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 105.3 on numerous other platforms, including, Facebook, YouTube, Roku, others, Dolly? I'm sure there are others.
Mainly those. I go completely blank sometimes. They're all out there. It is a massive audience that we are being shown to, and it's amazing. We love UPRN for that reason. We're very blessed to have been accepted into their fold,
Yes, and the chat is just going crazy with questions. So at some point, I do want to get some of these questions asked, because it's always fun to engage with our audience.
Sure.
But, yeah. So crop circles. Did you actually get to see it being made?
Well, I didn't. I heard it being made rather than seeing it, because so in the experience, I was sitting in the middle of a small craft. I would guess that the diameter of that craft might have been about 20 feet. Wasn't a great big craft.
Okay.
And so I was seated in a barrel-shaped chair, which seemed like right in the middle of that craft.
Yeah.
And so the floor of the craft was under me, of course, so I couldn't see down through it, but I could hear that right near me at the center of the craft, sounding like it was coming from under the floor of the craft. I could hear a big whoosh noise, as if somebody had turned on a very strong fire hose. Yeah. That's what it reminded me of, the sound. And it went swoosh, and then it seemed like that is the whole craft, moved around a little bit, whoosh again, and around, whoosh, all the way around in a circle. And then, of course, I had no idea what the pattern was going to look like, except it seemed like a circle of circles. And then the craft went wee, whizzing around in a circle. It turns out to be the ring, you
Right.
know. So the outside, and I have always hated amusement park rides where you go
Uh,
whizzing around.
you realize you were in a drone. Did you know that? And I know somebody who has a working drawing and a 3D of that particular drone, Michael Schratt. You should call him and say, or I'm going to call him and say, I want you to call Barbara Lamb and let her talk to you about it because you need to see that. Okay. Because that's
Good. Well,
exactly what you were
I
in.
never saw it from the outside.
You didn't have to. The
Yeah, I
inside
just
is
saw it
it's
from the
normally a
inside.
certain way, right? Michael Schratt has pictures of the inside of it, working drawings of it,
Oh,
and
good.
I want you to see it. It's
And
important. Yeah.
Preston's wonderful sister-in-law, Kasara, Christine Dennett, I commissioned her to do a painting of
Mhm.
the inside of the craft.
Ooh, I got to see that. I
Of
haven't
me
seen that.
sitting in a barrel-shaped chair and two barrel-shaped chairs in front of me with a being in each one and a
Right,
big window going around and the
right.
control panel, which didn't show up as a control panel until one of them reached out and touched it, and then the craft would do something different. Um, yeah, so it was a very simple plane. I think it was round. It seemed round.
They're kind of
So,
egg-shaped, like a little
part-
elongated egg, like it's got a little bit more of a flat back end, and it's like a tic tac that had its butt chopped off. That's what they look like. You're very
uh,
cool. And that's a drone. I'm going to
oh,
send you pictures, okay? Because I have pictures of drones coming out of a craft, and you need
ah,
to see them. So yeah,
okay. Well, it could be. I always thought of it as a craft, a small
they are. They're just
UFO.
drones. They can fit you in them. The AI Grays use them mostly, and but a human being can fit in when I've been in them, and they're kind of cool and they're fun. And they always use drones to make the crop circles. They're very fast. They have a job to do. They get it done, and then they take off. So
That's interesting because
yeah,
um, nowadays there are a couple of young men in England who do drone videos
yeah.
of the crop circles, which is a wonderful, wonderful way to see one. Yeah, it's certainly easier for me these days to see it that way rather than to go in them. Although I went into probably almost 2,000 during those 27 years.
That is
Went
so
through
cool. Yeah.
2,000 crop circles, but nowadays I'm really happy that somebody's taking good drone videos of the crop circles.
Yeah.
What do you suppose their purpose is? I always thought they were just kind of a little wake up call for all humanity to say, just get you to think out of the box a little bit.
Oh yeah, I've always thought that too. I think there are more reasons than that too, but that certainly is one that persists in me, that they're letting us know or letting us wonder, getting us sort of tweaked so that we think, huh, where could
Yeah.
that be coming from?
Some
I
of
wonder.
them have an unbelievable amounts of information in them. Um,
Oh yeah,
Clearly.
Scientists,
yeah,
astronomers,
they're-
physicists have actually tried to transmit questions, and some crop circles are absolute dead up answers to those questions.
yes.
And I find that fascinating that
Oh,
they
me
don't
too.
openly talk about it. They should, you know,
I
because
know. I mean,
the governments just don't
when
say
you
it.
think of all that's going on now with the United States government,
Right.
and there's a little dribbling bit of information,
Yeah.
but
I know.
at least opening up for official people to be reporting
Right.
the sightings that they're having. So, I mean, that's a big step, and I'm very glad that that's happened, and hopefully more specifics will be coming out too. But I think that the crop circles have a number of different purposes. Of course, it's our guess. It's not that they leave a letter saying we put this here because you know. But I think one of the things that um, they are doing, as well as sort of waking us up and getting us to think in a larger context of, wow, I wonder if they're coming from out there. If that's true, what could be making them? I mean,
Yeah.
you think there's other life out there?
I don't
So,
know.
so that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and
Good
then I think,
question, and I just got a message. Do it. Okay, Voyager 1. I'm going to say this real quick. Voyager 1, NASA just reported that they cleared up its brain malfunction, and they used another computer to help it clear it up. It is now transmitting billions of miles away from us back to Earth. It is still alive. It is still go. Okay, so they're
oh,
still getting information from it. But on Voyager is a disk, and has a lot of information on it. And one of those things is it shows where we are in our solar system, third planet. It has a picture of a human beings on it, male and female. It has all kinds of things. It shows our DNA strands. And there's a crop circle out there, and I'm hoping you've seen it, where
a crop circle out in space, you mean?
no, on Earth in
Oh,
England that has a answer from that disk. In other words, they sent back the question that Voyager posed: "Who are you? Are you like us?" And there's a crop circle out there in England that has almost the same uh, question put back to us, showing them the answer. There's a being that looks like ET, shows their DNA strand, it has their body type, things like that. Have you seen that one?
well, yes, that was in 2001
Yeah.
in Hampshire County, and so the huge radio telescope at Arecibo in
Yeah.
1974, under the direction of Frank Drake, they had sent out this message,
Right.
the M13 star cluster, or anyone else who would pick it up, and telling about our chemical components, our mineral components,
Uh-huh.
our double helix DNA,
Yeah.
our population, our relation to our one sun, and our transmission mechanism, and yeah, the silhouette of a human man with
Uh-huh.
a small head and a much larger body, and then so that went out in 1974, and
Uh-huh.
then 2001 in an English field, which, by the way, was right next to England's largest radio telescope
Right.
uh, in
Exactly.
Hampshire
Yeah.
County. And so it came back the same looking pattern exactly. We call it a glyph because it's not a circular form; it's a long rectangular form,
Right.
and it was apparently, it seems, showing their chemical components, their mineral
Right.
components, their um, DNA, which has an extra strand
Yep.
instead of double helix; it's
Right.
triple, and then a little figure of their being, which is a larger head on a much smaller,
Right.
shorter
That's right.
body,
Yeah.
and their planet in relation to their two suns,
Right.
not just one
Binary.
sun,
Right.
and then their transmission system. And that pattern had been a crop circle in that very same field
Right.
exactly 1 year earlier.
Mhm.
And 1 year earlier, we didn't know that that meant that that was a transmission
Right.
system,
Exactly.
other beings, but um, apparently it was.
Yeah.
Learned a year later, yeah. So that was one of the most, I think, spectacular and meaningful.
Yeah. You'd think people would be jumping up and down. It should have hit the newspapers, everything. They suppressed it like crazy. They don't
Yep.
talk about it openly at all. And it just unnerves me. And I'm so glad you wrote that book. I really am.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
it's important data, you
for
know?
those of us involved in the whole crop circle
Yeah.
fascination, that crop circle was just marvelous. I mean, for me, it it, it was a proof of kind,
Yeah.
uh, of sentient, intelligent beings who had very high technology, you know, honoring the symbol that we sent out and answering it.
Right.
And for in a field,
Yeah.
not hidden away in a building or a library, but just out there in the open where
Right.
anybody who wanted to could go and see it, experience it, and photograph it.
Absolutely.
And then it was the next year, 2002, in a different field, but not too far away in Hampshire County, um, there was another crop circle, which was equally startling, really. And it was of a typical alien head and neck. And then the alien is
Spin.
holding a circular disc looking
Right.
like a CD
Right.
disc
Right.
and full of ASCII code information.
Right.
And that has been recorded. And boy, I think that message, which I'll mention in a moment, that message is so pertinent right now in history, particularly United States
Yes.
goings on. So the message, I'm paraphrasing. I should have a copy just written right by my computer, but I'm paraphrasing from remembering it. It was saying, beware of false promises.
Right.
We abhor deceit.
Right.
The conduit is closing, but there is still time.
Right.
So I think that
Short.
this
Yeah.
word, this message about beware of false promises
Right.
and lies,
Right.
we
And there are
abhor.
plenty right now.
You know,
Absolutely plenty.
oh boy,
And
we
the conduit is closing. Literally, I know why. They are not here now. They have bugged out. They cannot be here while we're going through what we're going through. Our planetary system is in trouble. Our poles are shifting. Our magnetosphere has lost cohesion. It's 40% down. We're taking heavy loads of gamma radiation. They can't fly here. It's too dangerous. And they've backed away from us. And there's a short period of time where they will not be here because of it.
yeah.
What's coming after that is serious. And when they say we have a job to do, their message totally is this, period. Wake up. Use your minds. Learn all that is learnable. Learn to hear the truth. Use your abilities. Wake up. Mind regression.
Discern the truth.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because we are being lied to, heavily lied to, and the only way each person is going to wake up is that they do this discovery through their own mind, their own selves. Okay, I can't take you through the process, or you can't really. We can help them, but they have to do it for themselves. Everybody's on their own here with that.
And they have to be willing
Exactly. That's the whole
willing to look at and face the realities that
exactly.
that
And it is a choice. You know, everybody has that choice. We're all autonomous beings. And that's exactly right. And I'm so glad that you brought that up. I'm so glad.
Yeah, because it's such a huge thing going on now.
Right, exactly.
But back to the crop circles,
Okay.
I think that another wonderful thing about them is that they are adding special energy to the earth. And that's one of the really marvelous things about actually personally visiting a crop circle is that as you walk along the tractor track, they call them tramway lines.
Right.
They have sort of nicer names for things than many things that we do, in my opinion. Anyway, as you're walking along the tramway line or tractor track to get into a crop circle, which is usually out in pretty much near the middle of a field, you don't notice any change in energy at all. But when you step into a crop circle, many of us can really feel a difference in terms of the energy. And also, many of us use things like pendulums and dowsing rods. I've used dowsing rods for many, many years. And some people go in with electrostatic voltmeters or magnetometers or microwave detectors. And so there are all these different ways of actually proving that there is a different energy in the crop circle, different than even an inch outside of the crop circle.
Right. They change the polarity of the
Very
ground underneath it. Yeah. It's like magnets. They can change, like if it's a negative polarity area, they can change it into a positive one. It's like rocks will absorb magnetism. And if there's a lot of heavy magnetism coming in and it's a negative charge and it's positive coming into it, it'll turn it positive and set it. And they can do that to the ground as well. So you're literally walking into positively charged areas and you feel it.
Yeah.
It's incredible. Yeah.
And
All right.
also,
I want to pop up some questions from chat if we could, because we're running out of time. We got a half hour left.
Oh, no. Okay.
oh no,
And so here's a quick one from Doxy, who is asking Barbara, can you point me to an Australian trusted therapist who can do regressive hypnosis? While I believe meditation is revealing more, I'd love to be regressed.
I definitely can, with highest enthusiasm. Mary Rodwell. She's
I had
a
her picture ready.
Mary is wonderful. She has regressed many, many people and has brought out so many excellent aspects of the whole extraterrestrial phenomenon. And gee, I didn't realize she was that much shorter than I am. Anyway, we're very good friends. And one time at a conference, somebody said to Mary, how did you and Barbara get to know each other? Because Barbara's in California and you're in Australia. And Mary, in her wonderful, cute way, she said, well, when I first saw Barbara, I just went, bang. And that meant said, bang, I know this person. So we feel we've probably been together in previous life. Anyway, she's a wonderful, wonderful hypnotherapist, very, very experienced in doing this, very honoring. She's a lovely, safe person to be with. So I thoroughly recommend her. You're very fortunate if you can have a session with her.
Yeah, I certainly know about her. And here's another question from Doxy, which I would like to expand upon. She's talking about being a lion in past life, and are there lion aliens? And I'm curious, Barbara, how many different types of ETs you've run across in your research?
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you, Doxy. Yeah, there are lion beings out there. They are called lion beings, but they really have more of a human type of body and size and shape, musculature, etc. But the head is more lion-like. That doesn't mean that they necessarily have a big lion's mane like our earth lions do, but they have that shape of face to some extent and remind experiencers of lions. So we refer to them as lion beings. There are also some beings who look more like a cat.
Yes.
Yeah. And then there are some beings, the reptilians, who look more like some of our earth reptiles, but they're also upright, 2 legs, 2 arms. Let's see, are you showing a picture of that?
Oh, yeah, a lion like ET. I see.
Oh, okay, good, thank you. Oh, yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Got him? Look.
Yeah.
Yes, I see it.
I did talk to one lady who completely described that, and I put it on the back burner until Dolly's like, oh, yeah, I've seen cat-like beings, and I've gotten a few more reports, but it's pretty rare.
Yeah.
From what
Yeah, they're not real out here, but they do show up. Yeah.
I don't think as far as I know, of course I don't know everything, but as far as I know, they're not so likely to be visiting people.
Right, exactly.
And yet people have seen them.
Right.
I've had clients who have reported seeing them on a ship, but they're not in direct relationship with them. Maybe there are some people who are. I don't know about that. But then being a lion in a past life, that part of your question, I personally don't necessarily think that we have lifetimes as animals. I have regressed people to having a pet that they have now or have had in this life who was part of a past life experience, but it was still a pet rather than the person having been one of those. I think that there are different opinions about that. And I can just say that in the many, many past life regressions that I have done, I have not ever had the experience of somebody having really been a different animal form.
Right, right.
So that's really all I can say about that.
Well, Water Lily's saying a big hello to Barbara, one of the nicest souls in the UFO community.
Oh,
Yes,
thank you.
she is.
Really? And
I
I love,
remember going to your UFO support group. I've been to a lot of them, and
oh,
everyone was just really lovely and friendly, and there wasn't
yes.
a lot of the fear you'd see in some of the other groups, which I thought was really amazing. And we had some weird stuff happen every now and then.
Right.
I
And then your sister-in-law, Kasara, at least a couple of times, maybe more than that, came to my experiencer group at home, which was in my home in Claremont, California, Southern California. And it was a wonderful thing because anybody who wanted to could go into the other room with her and describe one of the beings that they had been having experiences with. And Kasara would keep drawing with pastel, chalk pastels, keep drawing the being and erasing it when necessary until she got the perfect likeness of what the person had experienced with that being. I mean, what a gift, since people don't seem to be able to take photographs of the beings and they wish they could show them to somebody else and to see them again. So Kasara was able to do that absolutely beautifully. By the way, oh, I guess I said that she commissioned doing the inside of the ship that I was taken to in 1994. Oh, and I want to pick up on that thought again, too, that after that experience of going for the making of a crop circle in 1994, then it was just 3 years later that, to my surprise, because I hadn't expected to have any more experiences, to my surprise, my car and I were taken on one of the major Southern California freeways,
was
and
going to ask about this.
that was a whole different group of beings, and for a different purpose. And it was a wonderful experience. And I had the good fortune to be regressed to that experience by Dolores Cannon. This was
Wow.
1997. And the being, well, Dolores always really went for it. She to get all the information she possibly could, and she was really, really good at it. And the beings um, who came through the regressions that she did seemed to be very interested in giving information. And she knew that they knew, I think, that she was very sincere about it. She was going to share it with other humans so they could know more about the beings out there in space. And so, anyway, she kept asking questions. And at the end of the being, this was a tall white being, and with really big eyes, and wonderful being. And there were lots of little ones, all looking exactly alike, about 3 to 4 feet tall, and kind of a bluish gray, a silvery, bluish silvery skin. I thought of it as, and the really big almond shaped eyes, but they were a dark blue, and they were, in my opinion, absolutely adorable, funny, because they were so childlike and so curious and nudging each other out of the way, so they could get closer to this human, to me. Anyway, the whole purpose for that abduction, shall we say, was to take information from my brain about all the people, and that was a few hundred people I had regressed to extraterrestrial encounters at that point in time by 1997. And at the end of that session, and it was obvious that we had to stop because Dolores had some other commitment, and the tape and the tape recorder had just run out. So the being said, if you would like to have more information from me, I would be perfectly happy to give it to you. Just get together like you did today and do the same thing, and I will be there and answer questions. So we thanked him, and 2.5 months later, Dolores and I got together again when she came out to do some work in Los Angeles. And this time I had a long list of questions to ask the being, and he had a long list of questions. So that's what that whole session was for.
Wow.
2 hours was answering lots of questions. And by the way, Dolores Cannon put most of that information in the book that she was just completing at that time, her book called The Custodians. And the last 2 chapters are full of the information about my encounter experience. And instead of calling me Barbara the therapist, I wasn't ready to have it sort of publicly out there that I too was having experiences. After a while, I didn't mind. Like right now, I don't mind talking about it, but then I wasn't ready for that. And so she calls me Bonnie the investigator. But the last 2 chapters of The Custodians is full of that information, lots of information that he gave. He was a very, very cooperative extraterrestrial being. And then a few years after that, in the early 2000s, I had a remarkable experience in my home by myself one afternoon, walking from my study room through the living room to go to some other part of the house. And there was lots of sunlight coming in the living room window. As soon as I entered the living room, I was really surprised because there was somebody standing in the middle of the living room. You know, as I said, lots of sunlight coming in. So I could see it clearly. And not only was I surprised there was somebody there, because I thought I was completely alone in the house, and I keep the doors locked when I'm alone in the house. And this being was a reptilian male being standing there. So that was all a real surprise. And even more surprising was that he impressed me as being just such a nice guy, even though I had heard some kind of somewhat disturbing and scary about reptilians from some of my clients, and about some nice reptilians from other clients. But anyway, this guy just seemed like a wonderful guy, just so friendly and safe. And I went right over to him. He had his hand out for a handshake, and I took his hand and held that hand in the handshake position for the next several minutes, during which he was talking to me. And I realized later, you know, I didn't hear any voice. He was talking to me telepathically. And that meant that I had the ability, which I had not known about, to understand
Right.
what his thoughts were, to hear them just as if he had been speaking them with his voice. And anyway, he said that he was there as a friendly ambassador to validate for me for sure, absolutely for sure, that experiences that people have with extraterrestrial beings are real, that they really do exist and they really do come here. They really do have experiences with people. And the reason that he thought I needed validation, even though in my conscious, aware life, I was very, very accepting of the people's experiences and convinced that they were true. But still, this being knew that when I was in another part of the world, I did a lot of traveling in all of those years, and very involved in, let's say, India or China or Tibet or someplace else, doing very different things, that once in a while, the thought would occur to me, when I'm home doing all that regression work, I wonder if that could really, really be real. And it would be just a passing thought. But these beings knew that. What they know about us is absolutely astonishing to me.
Right.
They know so much more about us than we know about them. We're
Yep.
trying to catch up, but boy,
Right.
they're
I
way
had a
ahead.
similar experience, actually. I was expressing some doubt about a case and was called onto the roof of my condo, and a UFO showed up and said, "She's telling the truth. Watch this. This is us.
Oh,
We're Wendy's
good.
ETs," and it starts darting around. Yeah, that was my
Oh,
first telepathic message from the UFO. So
I'm
yeah,
glad. I'm
and I
glad you got
suspect
that.
that all researchers have a connection. I really do.
They do.
Yeah, probably. Or why would we be so incredibly interested in
Right.
this?
Well, they're us, we are them, we're all one.
Yeah.
And that is the absolute truth. And we're all connected. And when you're using your psychic abilities, you can be in contact with them at any time. And all you have to do is ask. And
I'm going to
Good.
pop up another question. I don't know if you can answer this one, Barbara, but probably you could, Dolly. This is from D. Jeskra. Question: if anyone was to reverse engineer crashed ships and use them for negative plans, would ET interfere or allow that to happen? Gosh, we can
okay.
only I mean,
Um,
speculate.
they have been
Probably.
trying to back engineer and they cannot build a craft like ET can. And they're nowhere near it. Yes, they are using their back engineering plans to do negative things with those
Mm.
craft. We are our own worst enemies in this, in that we caused all our own problems. We have allowed this to occur, and they can't. We're autonomous beings, and so are they. And as long as we don't take it to them, uh, we are only have ourselves to thank for this, and we're the only ones who are going to suffer for it. They will not directly intervene. They have tried many, many times to show us the error of our ways and to show us that we're behaving negatively, and the powers that be on this planet are not getting it or won't get it. Take your pick. But yes, we can build bombs and guns and lasers out of anything, and we do use back engineered craft to load them up with the ability to hurt people.
Have
Oh,
you ever gotten information on that sort of thing, Barbara, in your regressions with people?
yes, bits and pieces of it all added up. It's very much like what you have said, Dolly. Yeah.
Yeah. It's sad to me. It's one of those things that I have to live with, knowing it, and it's not happy. That's why my message to everybody is so um, what's the word, voiced, with as much veer that I can give, is to
Yeah.
please wake up. Just please wake up, because we don't need to be behaving this way. And as long
Oh,
as we're allowing everybody to do this, we're all part of this. Whether by direct or association or in not doing anything, you're still causal to
yeah.
the problem, and we have to wake up.
Right. Well, I
And
want to pop up another question. Sorry, Barbara. this
it's
was
okay.
asked an hour ago, actually. So
All
that's
right.
how far behind we are. And Brian Morgan is asking, please ask Miss Lamb, what was her most frightening regression she was a part of, please? And thank you.
Okay.
Well, I have to honestly say that none of them. I've had 4 experiences that I'm aware of, and they were all completely non-frightening. They
Okay.
were all completely all right. Even the reptilian experience was a good experience. And the 4th one was that I was just sort of scooped up. I didn't see what did it. I was just sort of sucked up through my hallway ceiling and up through the guest room up above and through the roof, and they let me look down on the roof, which I was very interested to do, and then they took me up further, and I was looking down at my whole neighborhood, which was fascinating to me, and then on up very quickly, way up there. This was daytime, and I didn't see anything doing it, but just felt myself being drawn up. And as I was way out there, I could see that what I was headed to looked like a big sphere of peachy pink colored cotton candy.
Yeah.
The texture it looked like.
Yep.
I've not heard of this from anybody else, by the way, but so it was a complete surprise to me. But it was so pretty in the blue sky, this peachy pink, a great big ball.
Yeah.
And I went up into it. It was again just drawn up vertically, drawn up into it, and set on what was a floor, although it didn't feel like a hard floor.
Yep.
And then I could see ahead of me by maybe 15, 20 feet, there was a whole line of beings, about 8 or 10 of them, just went right next to each other. And they were very tall and extremely thin.
Right.
And their heads were just sort of bulb shaped. And they were transparent. I could see this peachy pink background through them. And once they could tell that I was seeing them, we sort of locked eyes, in other words. Then they all started undulating like seaweed and coming closer to me till they were maybe about 8 or 10 feet away. And then they started talking. I didn't see any mouths move.
Right.
The mouths were just tiny anyway. And if even there. And so it must have been telepathic. And they were saying, Barbara. So they seemed to know me. And they said, we want you to know that we are so pleased that you and your friend have written the book you have just completed. And that was the Alien Experiences book, which completed in January of 2008. And they said, it's time for people on Earth to know that there are many of us in existence, and many, many of us are aware of Earth and you humans on Earth. And it's about time for those of you on Earth to start knowing about us. And they mentioned that phrase, it's time.
Right.
They mentioned that over and over again.
To make a dimensional jump, Barbara.
What's that?
You got to make a dimensional jump. They were in phase. That's why everything looked like it did. You were in outside your own dimension. They had pulled you up in broad daylight in dimensional out of time space. So you went up. If you had looked at yourself, you would have looked the same way. You would have actually.
Well, I have always felt that I went in my astral body rather than my physical body.
You were physical. You were dimensionally phased out of this dimension. In other words, they came and physically pulled you up, but you were brought up in phase with them outside the dimension. That's why they were kind of see-through and ethereal, and the ship looked peachy and puffy and all that. That's so they don't get caught pulling you up, and they kept you out of space-time while you were there. So that's
it was lovely.
Yep.
And they just seemed so sweet and gentle and loving, knowing, accepting, complimentary.
And
you
they also tall grays, by the way. Yeah, you met tall grays. That's who you saw.
That's what
you met tall grays. That's who you met.
Well, I wouldn't say they were
deal with all the time. Yeah, tall grays.
Then that's not what I saw.
What did you see?
They looked like very tall, thin plants.
Yeah,
like a scallion.
Right. Or, in dimensional flux, that's how they would look. But they're tall grays. You described the shape of the head perfectly, and their height, and they're very, very thin. My contact mama is probably 6 foot, between 6'2" and 6'4". I've never measured her, but she probably weighs 80 pounds soaking wet. I'm not kidding you. And she is we're in dimensional flux. She does that. She looks like grass. We all do. We all look weird. We glow. We do all kinds of stuff when we're out in dimension. Yeah. But you described those as tall grays.
Oh, good. All right. Thank you. I didn't know that. Yeah. So anyway.
Janice says, Alien Experiences is a fantastic book. It has a great chapter on exploring your personal experiences that is so very helpful for those wondering if they have been visited.
Yep.
So yeah, really good reviews on your book,
Yep.
Barbara.
Yep.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yep.
Well, my co-author Nadine Lalich was absolutely wonderful, and she was a lifelong experiencer herself, and that's why she came to me initially,
Uh-huh.
to start exploring some of her
Wow.
experiences that she had had, and during the process of that, she said, "Gosh, Barbara, you've had so much experience with this, you know so much. Why don't we write a book together?" So we decided to do that.
That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
and then the beings in that experience, they went on to tell me, and they used the word brilliant. They said, "It's a brilliant combination, you and Nadine Lalich." And and they mentioned all of her qualities, and they mentioned my qualities, which balance each other out very, very nicely.
Mhm.
So um, that was wonderful. So it's another case of really being convinced that they know so much more about us. How they do that, I don't know, but maybe they do remote viewing or something similar to what some of our human people do.
Yes.
But anyway, it's just fantastic. So, Preston, you showed there for just a moment this book, Alien
Yes.
Experiences, which is geared for children, and it's about children's experiences with extraterrestrial beings. And I have worked with a number of children, done regressions with some of them, and just simply talked to others who remember a remarkable amount because they were not shut down by anybody. In other words, when they would talk to their parents about it, the parents would say, "Oh, tell me more," and would ask questions to bring out more. So there was quite a lot that they remembered. And this book is designed for children to validate their experiences if they're having those experiences, and to acquaint other children with the fact that these experiences are happening for many. And we like the fact that it can open up conversations with
Right.
their parents or whichever adults would be reading it to them. And I've gotten feedback that some parents have been reading it to their kids and suddenly remember, oh my God, that happened to me. I remember being on the spaceship and seeing Earth from the window, seeing that in the distance. Or I remember all these other beings who look so different from each other watching when I was having a physical exam or whatever the scenario is. So we have about 18 different scenarios that come from real children's real happenings. And it's just being republished now, right now as we speak.
Right.
It's a publisher having a new edition published of it. So any of
Cool.
these books can be found on my website. There's an order form on the website. So Meet the Hybrids. It's about the ET human hybrids. And I've been discovering that there are quite a number of people who have come to me over the last few years who do seem to have all the earmarks of the 8 hybrids we did extensive long interviews with. And they have the same characteristics, the same kind of experiences. So there are more people who are coming into awareness that they are partly ET. They were born here, raised here, live here, but they have some extraterrestrial DNA, usually from more than one species, too. It's
Right.
usually a group, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 different species of beings who are all working together. And they all have many visits with the ETs whose DNA they have, and they welcome these visits. They're not horrified. They don't consider them abductions. They
Correct.
consider it
Contacts.
a privilege when they're taken on the
Barbara,
ship.
I'm a hybrid.
Okay, I'm not surprised.
Right. Yeah.
Welcome,
And
welcome
I
to.
don't think of anything as abduction. It is all contact. You know,
Yeah.
it's like the word abduction, it's a human word and it is negative, and
Oh,
that's not
yeah.
what it's about.
Right.
So I
I'd,
want this
I'd,
contact.
I'd rather call it an encounter or experience
Right.
or contact. So
So overall, Barbara, would you say that this is good news for us? The whole fact that we're being visited by these ETs, because there's so much negativity and fear and confusion and disinformation.
I
But
know I think there are some beings who are not to our liking, and they do things that we do not like. I do think that's part of the whole phenomenon. But from the work that I've done, when we really get into it, even things like the physical exams on a hard, cold medical table where the
pretty
person
much
can't
the worst
move.
I hear is that.
Yeah, yes. And but even then, when we really look into it in the regression, I mean, almost always, well, I would say always, they it's discovered that there's something good, helpful, useful going on for that person,
Right.
and that that person may have many other kinds of things happening
Right.
with the beings on other occasions. It's not all just physical exams and stuff like that, but sometimes people are taken just simply for learning more, for being taught wonderful things like how to heal other people or how to heal animals.
That comes up
You're-
a lot, actually.
yes, yes. In addition to being healed themselves if they need healing. And they're taught a whole range of psychic abilities that they may not have been aware that they had. But those are really fostered and encouraged and taught and assisted. And they are taught about many different kinds of things. And so many people, having had the regressions, they realize, oh, I didn't have to be worried about that.
Of course not. Right.
Maybe they had been very worried about it beforehand. And but so often they find out, wow, that's amazingly helpful or amazingly good. I never would have thought that. Because I think we have to acknowledge that it's so understandable that when people are waking up at night and there are unusual beings in the room, of course that
They're going
would
to
be
ask questions every time.
very frightening,
Yeah.
very frightening. I
What's
mean,
going on? Yeah,
I
exactly.
would be too,
Right.
but,
Everybody
but
should.
often,
Yeah.
and then to be um, paralyzed, to not be able to move or call out, that adds to the fear, and then being levitated up off the bed and across the room and realizing you're off the ground and what's happening, what are they doing, where am I going, who are they, and they look so different than we do, and gosh, I totally sympathize with people who have those experiences and have not learned about what actually goes on in the
Exactly.
experiences. Because there's so much going on that really
Yeah.
is helpful and useful,
Yeah.
Yeah.
likable
Well, this
even.
is why you're on my short list, Barbara, of really good researchers out there. Because people
Exactly.
ask me, and I'm not going to name names on the bad ones, but some are absolutely on my naughty list.
Yeah.
I mean, they really
Right.
are.
I know. I know.
Well,
Your research matches exactly what I found. It's pretty much
yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it can be very scary, especially in the beginning.
yes,
But I don't think they're out there to hurt you for the
No, not at all.
no,
vast majority of
No.
cases.
or to even scare us,
Exactly.
but they do scare us, and
It's normal. We're
I
taught to be afraid, so that's one of the reasons why. We live in a
well,
society that absolutely breeds it in us deliberately. And
Well, I think
you know,
I think you've got a really excellent point there, Dolly.
yep.
And we're in a culture that loves, or at least a large
Be
portion of it,
scared. Yes.
loves scary things. I mean,
Yeah.
many people will go again and again to see a horror movie or one's about war or killing or crime or, and I mean, fear
Yeah.
fear and domination and anger and all that stuff is just, unfortunately, in my opinion, unfortunately,
Yep.
it's part of our culture.
Yep.
And the more something is scary, the more it tends to sell.
Right.
Just
Exactly. Yeah.
like
100%.
newspaper headlines, and that used to be a really big feature, I think more than now,
Right.
because we got the internet and movies and everything. But it used to be that the newspapers would put out some scare headline, and then everybody would want to go run and
No,
get
it's a
that
it's a
copy.
habit. It's a habit. It's a bad habit. You know.
Yeah, so we've
Well, we're
been
getting to our last few minutes here, so I want to pop up maybe one more question or
Okay.
two. This is from
oh,
Red Peanut. How do they make crop circles?
well, what a wonderful question. I can't give a definitive answer, but we have theories. And one of the theories is that there is well, people have actually seen and photographed one way, which is that they see a beam of light coming down, especially in the nighttime, but it's even been seen late afternoon in England by one fellow. They see a beam of light coming down, and they'll follow it up, and they'll notice that there's some sort of an object, a craft up there that the beam seems to be shining down from, and it's shining down into a field. And there have been witnesses that have even watched the beam of light sort of spinning and swirling around the crop. And then after that's gone, or maybe the next day, they'll go by that field again and walk out into it and realize, oh, there's a new crop circle. So that's been witnessed.
Right.
It's also been witnessed being made by balls of light.
Right.
There's
They
been
do use light technology. That's exactly what they use. They also use electromagnetic light technology, and they can build an array, a light array, and they drop it down magnetically, and they punch it like you punch paper. You make an impression with
huh.
this, with a seal. It's an electromagnetic seal, and they drop it down, and it does it for them. And it's prearranged. They know what they're doing, and they drop it in light. You can see it.
Oh, they definitely know what they're doing. They're
Yes.
wonderful artists.
Yeah.
And then there have been people, like a whole big group of people in 1990, I think it was, when they were out at a field, all kinds of cameras and recording equipment, just everything, as high tech as they could get in 1990. And they in the dark of night, they could hear sort of an electronic sound coming from over there in the field, coming closer, closer, closer. And it stopped out in the field in front of them. And then it retreated a few
Mhm.
seconds later. And then when daylight came, they noticed that there was a new crop circle right there
Yeah.
where it had stopped. So sometimes people can hear
Right. You
it.
can hear electromagnetic resonance. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're at the end of our show, so we've literally got like 1 minute left. Barbara, do you have anything you want to tell the audience about where they can reach you or upcoming events or anything
Oh,
like that?
sure. Yes. Well, wonderful. I'd like
In
to
30 seconds.
acquaint you with my website, which is barbaralamregressions.com. And that's where you can order the books. You can send an email from that website to ask about having a session if you would like to. Also, I have a YouTube channel, my own YouTube channel now, which is Barbara Lamb ET Regressions.
Cool.
YouTube, Barbara Lamb ET Regressions.
Okay.
So,
And we have all that in the show notes too.
Yeah,
So
we do.
oh,
We'll have
okay.
it on this.
well, thanks,
You have to come
Barbara.
back. You promise to come back? Say yes.
Oh, I'm sure I'd be happy
Okay.
to.
All right. We're going to work that out. Okay.
All right, we have to close the show in 30 seconds, Dolly.
I know I'm on the button. Good night, everybody. This has been the Light Gate. We're coming to you from UPRN 107.7 FM in Louisiana and United Paranormal Radio Network 105.3. Love y'all. Come see us again. Night, night.
Thanks, Barbara. Bye.
Thank you. It's been great.